It's a little. You okay?
Yeah. Erev Tov, everyone. The last of the Aseret HaDvorim. The Aseret HaDvorim are the centerpiece of this week's Parsha of Yitro. The last of them is Lo Sachmod. So there are very many difficulties with that. What does that mean? So in its simplest essence, it means you should not desire something that is not yours. But it's very difficult to tell people, how do we define desire? So the Gemara in Bava Kama, so to speak, gives up on the matter. The Gemara says that one does not transgress over lo sachmod unless one actually takes the item, steals it. Then when he steals it, so then he has violated 2 of the 10 commandments. He has stolen property that's not his because he desired property that was not his. But that without the action of actual stealing, of actually taking the item, there apparently is no lav of lo sachmod that's actionable. That's very difficult for us to deal with, because why would the Torah do that and make it one of the 10 principles if in fact it's not really definable, and if in fact there really is no actionable law involved unless one actually steals? Unfortunately, all deal with it, and it's a broad-ranging subject. But there are 2 elements that we can see here. One element that's disturbing is, how can the Torah tell you what to emotionally feel? We raised that problem with the mitzvah of V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha. How do you command somebody to love you when love is an emotion that many people never experience in their lives even? So how do you command someone lo sachmod? Don't desire, especially since desire is one of the basic traits of human nature. The Gemara says, "Einayim rose," the eyes see it, "V'alev chomedes," and the heart desires it immediately. So that's like almost an uncontrollable reaction. So there's an interesting shaila that's brought. For instance, if you go to the Tower of London, and I don't know why you would want to do that, but if you go to the Tower of London, so they have the royal jewels are there. Tremendous display of all of the jewels over all of the centuries that the monarchs of England have accumulated. And They're on display. Are you allowed to go there because of lo sachmod? So most of the Meforshim say you're allowed to go there because you know that it's unattainable. Lo sachmod are on items that are attainable to you. But I'm never going to have, those types of jewels. So I'm going like a museum piece just to see what they look like. As a matter of art. And the same question regarding going to a museum to see paintings. Now, I went a number of times to see the Mona Lisa. I'm never going to have the Mona Lisa, and in fact, I don't want to have it. But for a flash of a moment, I thought, hey, that's a nice painting, it'll go well in my dining room. So are you allowed to? Is that enough? Does that infringe on lo sachmod? So again, most of the poskim, almost all of them say it does not because it's unattainable. So that lo sachmod is lower to the level of the unattainable. And it's limited by that. So then we have another shaila that the poskim discuss, what we call window shopping. Now, these are items that are for sale. Are you allowed to go into a store? Let's say you go into Tiffany's in New York on Fifth Avenue. I know people that they went to a Lexus dealer because they wanted to have a test drive, but they have no intention of buying and cannot afford to buy it. So is that permissible? So the Meforshim took that away pretty much from lo sachmod and put it into gnevas das. To go into a store and ask for items that you know in advance that you're not going to buy, that's fooling the storekeeper. If you intend to buy, if you really would like to buy a luxurious automobile and you want to test drive it, yes. But if you're never going to buy it, so that's a question of gnevas das. Gnevas das, again, borders on lo sachmod, but it is not lo sachmod. So you have these types of questions that are practical questions that exist in our everyday life. Now, many times people enter a store with no intent to purchase, but somehow they walk out with a package. They have purchased something, whether on a whim or they saw something that really took their fancy, or there are many, many reasons why. We're very complicated people. And there are many devices in sales to induce people to buy. So in order to have commerce exist, buying and selling, it's obvious that it would not be over on any lo sachmod, because that's the derech olam. That's the way it is. I remember, for instance, there was an institution in Muncie that wanted to buy property to build upon. And there was a house for sale. And the house had a large backyard and front yard. It was a substantial house. So the people from the school went to look at it, but they didn't tell the owner of the house, the seller, that they're only interested, they would buy the house and knock it down because they want the property. So they went through the entire house and they asked him about the furnace and the windows and what the electric bills are and everything, as though they were going to be actually living in the house. Because they thought, and perhaps correctly, that if they told the seller that they're an institution that's buying and that they're going to knock down the house, so he would raise the price because he would feel that he's not selling to ordinary people and therefore he's not going to sell at an ordinary price. So is that also involved in lo sachmod? So all of these questions are discussed in halach. And the Gemara's opinion is that dvarim shebalev einam dvarim. I don't care what people think. I don't care what the seller thinks. I don't care what the buyer thinks. It doesn't affect the transaction. And it's obvious that in most cases, a seller, let's say a seller that is not being forced by circumstances to sell. So he sells because he thinks that the market it's not going to go much higher and this is a good price, and he sells. The buyer, the same house, he figures it's going to get better. He's a speculator, it's going to get better. Going to go higher. So we're not concerned with that because that's the derech olam. That's the way the world works. Every day, billions and billions of currency are traded on markets throughout the world. Nobody there expects that, for instance, if you are buying a commodity, nobody wants the commodity. They're buying it because they feel they can sell the right to buy it later for more money. I remember one of the great experiences in commerce in my life, was that when we were in the yeshiva together, it was one of our friends was really already deep into markets. So he came one day and he said, we have a chance to buy a carload of eggs at a very good price and we should buy it. So people pooled money together and they bought a carload of eggs. But they neglected to sell them. They get a call one day to come down to the freight yard and take your carload of eggs. They weren't buying eggs, they were buying something else. But all of that is dvarim shebalev. And dvarim shebalev einam dvarim. We don't reckon with that because otherwise we're paralyzed always in dealing with any sort of commercial transaction. So lo sachmod is a all-encompassing idea that one finds difficult to get any great definition to. And maybe that's why later in Voet Hanan, it doesn't say lo sachmod, it says titaveh. Titaveh is a reflexive verb already in Hebrew. It's ispael. Don't force yourself to desire things. That's a different level. I purposely go to see things that I can't, that I don't need. And that became, that became an industry. It's called shopping. So many times people are really addicted to it. So is that a question of lo titave or not? Which I mentioned is a different level of lo sachmo. So all of this has bearing, as I pointed out, in the practical world, but it also is meant to give us a viewpoint on matters. And the viewpoint on matters is that in most of the time in life, less is more, and that not having things, the more you have, the more troubles you have. And therefore, people have to be measured and conservative in their views on purchase and what is necessary and what is not necessary, in order that one should not fall into addictive habits or bad characteristics. Rabbi Chananya ben Akashi Omer Rotz HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakos Es Yisrael Leficha Chir B'Lehem Torah and Mitzvos Shenemar Adonai Chavei Saman Tzitko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir.